All right. Well, now we're back here doing the Arctic Indigenous Investment Series. So we had a little bit of time off. The summer's been really busy. It's been hard to get people into the studio, but we got Stephen Mooney. Stephen, why don't you give yourself an introduction?
Well, thanks for having me, Blair. Yeah, Stephen Mooney. I call myself a Yukon boy. Wasn't born and raised, but I didn't have an option because I was only 6 when I showed up. My father, I'm one of 8 siblings of the Mooney clan.
Okay.
My dad came up here to build AIIS hydro project. His forte in his engineering was to build hydro projects across Canada. So some Moonies were born outside of Toronto. Some Moonies were born in the North Saskatchewan River Dam project in Saskatoon. And then, the last ones were born in Saskatoon. And then 8 kids, 2 parents in a station wagon driving up 1970, hitting Whitehorse. Halloween night. It's an easy day to remember. And
Wow.
so that's what brought me to the Yukon. But super, super happy and thankful of my career that I've had in the Yukon. Educated out east, St. FX. Again, strong alumni.
You got the ring?
I do have the ring, but I'm not wearing it today. I wear it when I travel. I was wearing it last week. Educated St. FX, a degree in industrial engineering and computer science, and then went and got my master's years later in management and leadership. But my career has been really varied from first software development, did some time down in the United States in the .com world, helped build some companies down there. And then came back and spent some time with Northwest Technology.
Right.
And then the Yukon government asked me to take some risk and help build the Cold Climate Innovation Center at Yukon College, and then we became a university. And now I see myself helping out First Nations development corporations, using basically all my learned knowledge and education, helping them with energy projects, with investing. I help the Carcross Tagish First Nations on some of their larger scale projects, and then president of the Klawani Denisho, looking at investments in 7 generations. And, in that side, again, it's wide open with different technologies from, the aviation to to energy to startups in the Yukon that we're trying to invest in. So, that's it in a nutshell.
Well, let's unpack that. I think, first of all, when you mention your father and what brought you here, I think about my grandfather being a high-powered linesman.
Okay, sure.
And living in Watson Lake on Watt Drive, right there by the generator.
Okay.
And you just thinking about how the utility or, like building out the infrastructure of the Yukon is what brought a lot of families to the Yukon to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I find that really interesting. But thinking back to where I first met you, which is maybe a little bit of a fast forward in your story, but, seeing you in the Cold Climate Institute, Cold Climate Innovation, at the time, were you not the highest funded chair? Like, wasn't there some kind of, you were very successful in that role?
Yeah, I was, and it took a lot of work and a great team. We hire smart people. Smart people bring you great projects.
Yeah.
And we built the processes to support those projects.
Yeah.
And it was, Karen Barnes was the president of Yukon College and then Yukon University. And she allowed me to take some risk also. And that's what it was about. But it was a lot of trips to Ottawa. Economic development of the Yukon government was my core funder, but I really tried to keep the budget low and turn around and leverage that money with a lot of federal government agencies. NSERC, CanNor, all those were huge contributors. And myself and another coworker, when we first started building the Yukon Research Center, we had a little competition. Lacia Kinnear, she would go find 500,000, I'd go find 750. She'd go find $1 million, I'd go find 1.5 million. and we just found this money and built. It was fun times and great work, and working with a lot of great people. It was sort of an open door policy for Yukoners to bring their ideas, and we evaluated them. And if we thought there was some worthiness in those ideas, we wrapped a blanket around them and funded them.
Yeah. And I just remember you being the guy validating, investigating and validating technology. And you would go do the groundwork and kind of cut through, for me in the renewable energy space, kind of early days, you're overwhelmed with all of these options. They do it like this in California, do it like that, this technology, that technology, but you went and validated it. You went to the source and you brought, people like me and others who are project proponents out there. These are the technologies you should be looking at. You should really be looking at that one, and then get the funding, in some cases for some of the technologies. You would go through the process of getting them CSA approved, or you did a lot of the legwork, to get technologies going in the renewable energy space.
Well, I won't take the credit for all the legwork. I think I really found out where I could leverage those resources. Global Affairs Canada, huge supporter. I would mention a technology, and their job through their Trade Commission branch would literally search the world. If I said, looking for the best biomass machine, I would get an email 2 weeks later going, Stephen, Austria. You should go to Austria. And then I said, okay, let's go on tour. And they would, they would do the connections, because that's their job, right? All the ambassadors that are Canadian ambassadors to all the countries that we have in the world, they have the staff underneath them. And I was really lucky to get into that kind of network, and all it being to help Yukoners. And we had a saying at Cold Climate Innovation, there's only 3 types of ideas. There's crazy, there's good, and there's crazy good. And it was those crazy good ideas that, the crazies, right? When we had some of them, true crazies, and then the good ones, okay. But those crazy good ideas, you just went, wow. And you knew you had to go dig into them. And our job, and it wasn't just mine, but we built a team that we would sit these, when an entrepreneur comes into the room, there's never a lack of enthusiasm, right? Their idea is charged, they're pumped. Our job was to poke holes in it. And the good ones went, whoa, I didn't think of that. And then okay, great. Now let's find a solution for that hole. And we, so the good ones that we supported, saw some great technology, but also bringing technology. When I traveled, I would tell the universities, I'm here to steal your technology. And they would kind of look at me. I'm going, yeah, but politely, I want to work with you because the Yukon is very similar. I toured a lot of cold climate countries, all the Scandinavian countries. And when it comes to their technology, they're years and years ahead of us in certain technologies. And so it was great. And I was also very privileged to sit on the National Research Council. So that, and I thank Prime Minister Harper for getting me on that, because they had no Northern representation. And now you have access to Canada's best technology. And that's the first place I started. Someone had a technology. Okay, what's Canada doing? One email to the director or vice president of IRAP from the National Research Council. If he didn't know he would send me to someone who did somewhere else in the world. So that kind of network really helped accelerate what we could do at Cold Climate Innovation.
You know, and you mentioned some of these, like the Nordic countries and some of these examples of how to do it. What separates us? Why is it that they have such utilization of the technology and have embraced it to such a degree? Like, we still have access to the same technology, but we're not seeing it demonstrated and deployed in the same scale.
Yeah. Simple answer, I think, is risk.
Right.
It's the risk. People don't want to take risk.
And because we haven't had that obstacle, like that restrictor, that force, you know, I think in some of these areas too, they've had real energy risks or real security risk or real risks that they've had to get in front of, and we've actually been kind of cushioned in so many different ways.
Yeah, or I could say spoiled.
Yeah.
Right. And but when it comes, you know, when people are pressured, people have to take risks. And I think it's that comfort. Humans are lazy, and it's the, you know, they're comfortable with what they do. They don't want to try a different technology, and so all the technologies that we brought into the Yukon, and still to this day, is, I always say, let's bring it under applied research. It might not work perfect here, but we're going to learn a ton.
Yeah.
And, you know, the Biomass Teslin, you know, the project that you brought in, I still remember when I met the chief, showing him at the Raven Recycling Center, where we installed the first Hargasner. And and then he phoned me up 2 weeks later, and he just called me Mooney. Went, Mooney, Richard, he was Chief Richard.
Yeah.
And he goes, Mooney, I want 10 of those.
Yeah.
And I went, Chief, you don't want 10. Let's start with 3. And he goes, no, 10. Let's get 10. And then you were on that project, and you guys rolled out 10 of them.
I have all the photos. You know, that was such a cool thing. Like, Teslin is unique too. When we do things, we do things. We come in mass.
Yeah.
And we had the executive director. We had our kind of economic development planner. We had counselors. We had the chief. We had a project, like we had a full team ready to go. But I think what was interesting there is that the work that you did with Chris Schmidt and getting Raven Recycling as this demonstration site, you know, like going there and seeing this is working. And the way you even had it like built, that there was kind of like clear plexiglass sections so you could see things, kind of see the chips coming through the auger, getting, you know, and you can kind of see it function. And then knowing that that's probably got the worst fuel source that you could, you know, we're grinding up pallets, nails are coming through, you know, here's, we don't have any issues, and this is what happens. They might adhere together. You just pull it out, keep it going. Like, it was such an amazing demonstration that, and, you know, fast forward to today, I've done the Austria tour. I've gone through Germany. I've gone through Denmark. You know what technology I think is the best is still Hargasner. You know, in that application, you know, it was the perfect technology for exactly what we needed it for. You know, it doesn't break down. It's got this robust engineering. It's just designed so well. And I mean, it was such a perfect application, you know, and that's something I really worry about. A lot of these, not hypes, but these pushes that you get the wrong technology put in front of you. That is such an important part of the process. It's so early. You don't know anything. You know, you get caught in the hype with something, and then you go down the rabbit hole, you throw a bunch of money, and then something breaks down. And I've toured a lot of those too. I've seen these sites, and you spent $2 million on a Italian chipper that you can't fix yourself, or Swedish chipper, or that boiler system, or that technology, or, you know, what you're trying to accomplish here, you could have done differently, but now you're stuck. And nobody wants to keep throwing money at a bad problem.
So doing your homework and reducing those risks. like talking, and this is the thing, fundamentally, I'm a huge fan of academia.
Yeah.
And if it hasn't been through academia, I don't want to touch a technology.
Right.
And because that's, at the lab, but then has it scaled? And, you get into the technical readiness level. Where is it? Is it a 7 or is it a 9? Is it proven? Are they manufacturing it? And then, we would get calls at Cold Climate Innovation and people would say, well, we got this technology. It works down south. And I'd go, just a minute. And I'd get my crew and they'd come into my office. I'd put it on speakerphone and I said, now tell us about your technology. And within 5 minutes, we would be hitting the speaker going, this won't work in the north. And then I'd go, okay, to the guy on the phone saying, have you thought of this about in the north? And they'd hear this pause and we're going, oh no. I'm going, okay, well, if we could fix that, maybe, as part of applied research project up here, we could work on that and probably solve that problem for you.
Yeah.
And it was those technology or those companies that would say, that's a great idea. The ones you don't want to work with are the ones going, oh, no, it's going to work, as if they know better than you.
Right.
And, living in the north, we know this. We because we've been at 40 below. We see things break, but it's all just that learned knowledge up here, and then understanding the technology and seeing where the gaps and where things could break.
Yeah.
And fixing that and starting small.
Yeah.
You don't buy 10 with Richard Sidney.
Yeah. Well, we did.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
but,
we
yeah,
did.
But we did one first, right? And we knew that technology was pretty solid.
Yeah, you did one first. Yeah. And then we bought 10.
Yeah.
Now we're up to 15.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. And we keep scaling it out and scaling it out.
And I think every community in the Yukon, every community in the north should have one of those, should have a biomass, as part of your quiver, your energy quiver. Yeah, absolutely.
And I just remember in that public engagement phase, I was a counselor for my First Nation. I was on chief and council, and I just took it on, and I'm now a professional business planner. I was a growing professional business planner. I just did all the business planning. I just did it on the side of my desk. I did the fundraising with people like Brad Stoneman, and Tim Kant actually was the one who got the first 800K from Canor that really de-risked it. But I remember our community engagement session, and you came to the community engagement session, and I had this 200-page PowerPoint deck where I created almost like a course. It was a bit overwhelming. I'll probably do it a little differently now. Yeah. But I just, I was trying to explain it as best I can. Here's what it could look like. And after an hour of presenting, the first hand up said, what is biomass? And
right.
And I was like, Stephen, you're like, biomass could be anything. It's organic.
It was an elder who asked that question.
Yeah.
And we used that term probably 30 times.
Exactly.
And I just went, wow, okay. Yeah. And so,
because you can get going, you can get caught up in it, but it's have we actually explained what this is?
Yeah. I recall that so clearly. Yeah. I can see her face saying that. Yeah. I just went, wow, okay. Yeah. We really got to back up here. But we handled it, and she went, yeah, okay.
Sure.
Yeah. It's carbon, things that burn. In this situation, ma'am, it's wood chips. And then she went, oh, wood chips. Yeah. And everyone can relate to it. Right. Yeah. That's the thing about that. But I'll say, these projects, the reason why they're successful, any project in the communities, is a champion. And you need that local champion. Yeah. And your group. Teslin's an awesome community because the First Nations, non-First Nations, the community works together. Right. And, they got your 10, 20-year plan, and that great drawing you have of the roadmap. It's literally a roadmap of all the projects that want to happen in Teslin. And again, it's, you need a champion, and you need that vision, and you need those people who are going to take risk. Yeah. And that's why it was, I think, really successful. And it's not stopping. Biomass is, the production of our trees are still growing. The Finns believe you can't kill a forest, where we look at it and going, oh no, we got to protect the forest. Yeah. Well, I'm leaning towards the Finns, that they manage their forests so well. They have minimum forest fires because they manage their forests.
Right.
Climate change is messing with everyone, but yeah, there's biomass everywhere, and managing that forest as the community grows. You gotta go in and make more streets, clear those roads, clear the highway. All that could be, and you guys are doing.
You're generating it. You're generating that, what we call incidentally harvested wood. I mean, the things you said, gravel pits, subdivisions.
Yeah.
But the big one right now is in all these comprehensive community wildfire plans.
Yeah.
They're trying to
Fire smarty.
They're trying to protect, and we're just looking at an 8 kilometer, say an 100-meter fire break is going to create like 8 to 10 years of energy for our infrastructure, plus however big we grow down the line. But if you don't have that infrastructure in place, those types of opportunities you miss, because that fiber can't just sit there and wait for you.
Yeah.
And if you're not dealing with that, being proactive with your community, it could all just burn. And I think that's a real wake-up call. And I don't know if everybody got that wake-up call. Like, we've had a couple of years ago, we had 2 communities that got evacuated at the same time, which was the first in our history. And you look at Yellowknife that got evacuated a few years ago. Like, think about a major population center like that needing to get evacuated. Sure. And, it's so important to be proactive in that way. The risk is there. The technology's there, the demonstration's there. It's just how do you get things moving along? I think the hard part, though, is the technology we're replacing is a solid technology. When you think about diesel or heating fuel systems, it's well known, easy to operate. There's local technicians that can fix it. There's a readily and available supply chain, but it spills, it pollutes. There's contamination issues,
right?
And it's inefficient. The business case can be made, but it is hard when you are trying to replace technologies that have been working, do well, and you're trying to create an environmental business case or environmental pitch. But I think it's the protecting our communities and being able to utilize that energy. Like, you start winning that double win, triple win. You start to really see it's like, okay, you can start stacking success and create like an avalanche of benefit here.
Absolutely. And the other things, keeping that money in the community,
right?
Recycling a dollar in a community is huge. And, go back to Teslin, you can fill your truck up with wood, go to the scales, get it weighed, get paid for that wood. And then that money stays in that community and is cycled, they say, 3 to 4 times. And that's just a moneymaker. And guess what? You have to heat your buildings already.
You have to.
So why are you bringing in fuel from the outside and just letting that money disappear outside the community when you can do something like that?
Yeah. So
other technologies.
What other technologies are you interested in, or what else were you part of?
We looked at a lot of things. Wind, I'm a fan of renewables, absolutely. Biggest, of course, is hydro, because of all the renewables, hydro is reliable. That's the difference between hydro, wind, solar. Wind and solar.
You're talking about that winter base load.
Not even winter.
Yeah.
It's just that the solar and wind are inconsistent.
Right.
And now in certain places of the world, it's more consistent. But up here in the north, we get cloud cover, we get lack of wind. Now in the wintertime, yes, our winds are higher in the wintertime, and wind can work. And wind is part, again, I'd say another arrow in the quiver of energy, but it isn't as reliable as hydroelectric power.
Right.
And I believe I know there are other sites in the Yukon that probably, looking at the situation we're in now, we should have been rolling out hydro sites 20 years ago.
Right.
And easy to say, and I understand the challenges Yukon Energy faced. And so now what are we going to do? Well, Yukon Energy is calling for 40 plus megs of thermal, which is either going to be diesel or LNG for the next 20 years. And that is a step backwards. But we're in this situation now. And how are we going to get ourselves out of that? I believe the First Nations and the Development Corps are the answers to that. Category A lands, they own the land. There's some hydro facilities that are all on their traditional territory. So I think it's up to the First Nations to look at those sites and start producing hydro. The far end technologies, small modular reactors, huge fan of those. There's still ways out there. And Canada, there's a huge renewed interest for that across the globe right now. And I believe that technology is going to come. Which technology? There's a lot of different SMR technologies.
But I mean, even SMR, we're still talking about like not a huge capacity, right? Like what kind of capacity do SMR technologies provide? Like 10 megawatt? Like they're basically kind of like a mini dam.
No, you can get them up to and they're varied. And I'll say, up to 200 megawatts.
An SMR. Or is that a proper nuclear facility?
Okay.
Because you can get a couple gigawatt like CANDU reactor. Right?
Those are big. So when you're in Toronto and you look to the east to Pickering and you see that big cooling tower, and the neighborhood are getting the iodine pills. Seriously, just in case a cousin of mine lives there, and she goes, they mail us iodine pills every year, and I'm going, what?
Wow.
And it's a 2.5 kilometer radius. Now there's some technologies. Blaikala, it was called lead cold out of Sweden. We brought them up years ago, and that technology is 50 megs. And that is 50 megs with 100 meter radius of the unit. And one thing about that technology, and when Yannin came up and we had our first meeting with Yukon Energy, he shared that the ratio of heat to electricity was 2.5 times, almost up to 4 times to 1. So if they're making 50 megs of electricity, you're making 200 megs of thermal.
Right.
And within a 100 meter radius, you could do district heating. You could run those pipes and you could heat huge chunks of this.
Well, you could go much further than that.
On the district heting. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think of Old Crow and a small Blaikala, 10 megs. It's a true battery. You could have 1 meg for 30 years or 10 megs for 3 years, and still have all this district heat power that town.
Right.
And and then, the only fuel they'll need is for Air North to come in and out.
Right. And their equipment, their quads and skidoos.
We'll turn everything to electric then. Electric quads, electric skidoos. The long range guys, the hunters, might have to still stay on combustion engines. But
you're offsetting, like they have to bring a ton of fuel in.
And what's the cost of fuel up there, right? It's ridiculous. So SMRs, huge fan. And, we've got great sites for SMRs, these old mine sites,
right?
Faro, Minto, these are brownfield sites with transmission lines in them already to them. And, we need that technology to move along much quicker. And Alaska, the eVinci, their Siemens SMR, they're now the Department of Defense is now involved in that project. So I think that will escalate the applied research on that, because it's sitting technical readiness, probably like 7, maybe 8. where 9 is what we want commercialized on that scale.
You're talking about years to break ground?
No, actually just scale.
Okay.
There's a technical readiness level is an international standard for 1 is an idea, 2 is at the lab, and then 7, 8, and 9 are sub-commercial. They're building them now. When you get to 9, that is solid, proven, and you can mass produce them. But there's other technology. But I'll jump back to hydro because I love hydro. There's hydro projects and locations around the Yukon that could be started. And I truly believe it's up to Yukon Energy sitting down with the First Nations and saying, here's potential on your land. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
And in Carcross, there's a small hydro project. It's tiny, 300 kilowatts. But this little project is 50% of the consumption of the community.
Right.
And you think of, and it has winter electrons. That creek, Tank Creek, that comes off Montana, flows throughout the year. And of course, the flow does drop off compared to the summer and rain season and spring freshet. But it does produce year round. And those are those little projects that don't cost a lot of money, super easy to maintain. We could do more of them around the Yukon.
You start adding them up.
Absolutely.
And you're creating more production near demand, and you don't have to transport energy so far through the grid.
Yeah.
Right. That probably takes the pressure down on the overall grid as well, makes more room for other projects.
Yes. Yeah. And, it's just what we're doing now and going to thermal, and just our answer is diesel.
Well, it's a short term, right?
Short term.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we're in that crunch now.
Huge
right?
crunch.
You think about this Christmas, right? And it's we were not baking or cooking turkey or ham or whatever you would cook. You plan. People are turning their lights off. I think that was more kind of symbolic. But like it was.
But it was good. It was, guess what? We learned something.
It was scary. Right now the studio we're in Whistle Bend, and we're electrified heating here.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
Yes.
But we were wondering if the power rolls blackouts, what are we going to do? It was minus 50.
Yeah.
Are we going to have to go and get some electric heaters and a generator just so that our pipes don't freeze and our kids, are we going to have to sit in a running truck? Like, what does this look like? Super scary.
Oh, yeah. No. And it was a wake up call. And so this is what I'm saying. We were pushed and our backs against the wall. And what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so absolutely thermal, diesel generation, easy peasy to install.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them, the common. Taking a little more risk. LNG, we've got the LNG, but they're combustion engines, and true base load should be looking at turbine LNG.
Yeah.
A little more efficient, and LNG. Now we have to get that LNG from down south, but we're getting our fuel from down south.
Oh, we can't store it either. Like they have those towers, and it just spins off.
Easier to store than other things, than hydrogen, stuff like this.
Okay,
But no, diesel is well known. But we don't see hydro being built in the Yukon. There's not a lot of projects.
Well, a lot of the First Nations oppose it now, and that's
that's why I think we need to bring them along.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I just remember the push. Oh, what was it? It was Pezlowski days, and they were talking about the Legacy Hydro project, and they were looking at all of these highly scaled sites. And I just remember so many of the First Nations, maybe all of them, but they both said no fracking and no legacy hydro projects. So I think that really potentially, it creates a huge complication. I think you're right, though. It's through Indigenous partnership that we could actually develop these. We can do it right, do it the right scale, the right sites, the right balance of things.
Absolutely.
And really chip away at what is it that we need to accomplish here. How much generation do do we need? Does it all need to be one site? Sure, you get best economies of scale, but can we break this up into these smaller year-round projects that really start to add up and really take away or add some more sustainability to the system, some more consistency and
Yeah, absolutely. Geothermal.
yes. So I
Thoughts
think
are-
I told you about this. I went to the World Geothermal Congress this
Right.
year. And
Calgary?
In Calgary.
Yeah.
First time in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm very connected right now with Iceland, and I have a lot of colleagues that are in the geothermal space, whether they're the developer for the Blue Lagoon generation plant,
Right.
or I'm talking with the Reykjavik energy utility and geologists and drillers, and they're exporting their knowledge right now. They're in Kenya, building out their capacity. They're in China. They're all over the world, helping other regions access and realize their geothermal potential, and they have an interest in the Yukon.
Absolutely.
So I was asked to come down, and I spoke on a bunch of their panels, and something that I recognized is we're not the only ones talking about this or them. You're talking about the Department of National Defense, who just tapped NRCan and did a total North assessment, looked at, we need northern energy security. We need security of the North completely, but part of that is energy security. And NRCan did this big assessment and said Yukon is your best bet.
Yeah.
And so I'm now starting a Yukon geothermal task force.
Okay, super.
We're just trying to pull together a cross section of representatives to say, what do we need to do to start getting this moving along? Something that a lot of the Iceland guys said is, go to your elders, go to your community and say, where does it snow, but the snow doesn't stay?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And then
where's the warm water?
Yeah. Where's the warm water?
Yeah.
Where do you get these kind of properties? Now let's go start plugging some holes, pull that data, plug some more holes, pull that data, few more holes, you have a few projects.
Yeah.
And so that's the gap we're trying to backfill. I think once we get some excellent drilling and some data, we have huge potential. Like already from a tabletop study, there's anomalous heating opportunities within the Whitehorse Basin, within Carmax, within Burwash, Haines Junction, within the Teslin area. And these are just areas that, because you don't want to do it in the middle of nowhere.
No, overlay the grid. I always
Overlay
think
the grid.
Start with your strengths.
And you need to overlay the heat loads, because if you're not tapping into direct use is the term for utilizing the heat from a geothermal, you're missing out most of the potential.
Right.
And you could drill and kind of miss that major heat load that you're looking for energy, but you still got a geothermal project as far as direct use.
Sure.
But that electrification of the geothermal, I think, is the holy grail.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to hit. That's what Department of National Defense wants to hit. But they're going to be putting SMRs out there for sure.
Yeah.
That's part of the equation. They're looking at SMRs, geothermal. How do we integrate a number of these types of opportunities so that they have energy security, but I think the North has energy security. They're not going to do that alone. I think that they'll probably do some things alone, especially in some of those forward command bases where you just have no other way of tapping into it.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about Whitehorse or the Yukon, I think this is a really great opportunity for us to get involved as far as Indigenous businesses and wealth entities and saying, we're very interested in this. We want to help advance this. We want to make sure our communities come along, our leaderships come along, and we're going to help identify sites. We're going to support you coming in and doing some drilling. We're going to help raise some of the funding, and maybe we'll be some owners of a real geothermal project. And depending on where it lands, we could all own that. And I see that Indigenous utility concept being a real thing right now with the Yukon government at a debt capacity. They can't take on any more debt.
No.
And so, I just had a meeting with Minister of Energy, Mines and Resources and the Yukon Development Corp just yesterday, and they are exploring this. They're saying we need to partner and find other private opportunities of energy generation, and nothing's off the table. So I think we just need to get ahead of these things. We can't just wait. Department of National Defense is not going to wait.
Yeah.
Yukon Energy Corp's not going to wait. If we don't want them to backfill the need with just thermal, we need to progressively move forward projects like the one you mentioned and others. Yep. We need to identify them, move them forward, start putting a little bit of money and energy in getting these projects closer and closer and closer to shovel ready, community engagement, ready to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Want to talk about wind now?
Yes, yeah.
Leave it open. No, wind absolutely has some potential. Again, taking our grid, the existing grid, overlaying it with hills in the area, doing some studies, where the grid is close by, because transmission lines kill projects,
right.
the economics of them, and wind could also be in the works. Now, wind is expensive. I look at Heckle Hill, and you can go on Yukon Energy site and see for the last year how many gigawatt hours.
Small, right?
It's about 20%.
Oh,
20% efficient, or that's a tough word. Like if you take each tower is a meg.
Yeah.
And you do the math and you find out what's the potential of the gigawatt hours, a meg times 24 times 365.
Yeah.
And I don't know those numbers off my head.
Yeah.
And then you look at what Yukon Energy, what has produced in last year, and it's about 20%. So
20% of the total energy output?
20% of what they could produce.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So actually,
because it's only like a small margin of the total energy output.
Oh, it's a sliver.
It's a sliver.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And if we had more, yes, it could add. The life of those, and the technology, Kluane, look at Burwash.
Yeah. I see it spinning now. That's such a good sign.
However, that's a 900 kilowatt turbine.
Right.
They have it throttled down to only produce 300 kilowatts because that's the max the diesel generations in the integration can take.
Right.
And so, Kluane needs to have other sources or draw opportunity, and then they could turn that up.
Right.
So good news for Burwash that the school comes on. They'll have more need for electricity. Maybe they're the ones that should be looking at electric heat instead of diesel.
Right.
When they've got that turbine there.
Yeah.
Again, it's wintertime when we need the heat. That's when that wind is blowing through that valley.
It's well timed, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It works when it's spinning.
Yeah.
So it, again, part of the quiver, an arrow in the quiver, but it's the price and how expensive are those. I don't think if you looked at the business model for Heckle Hill, a private sector would have never done that because.
But it did though.
Well, but they got federal grant funding.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what made that project.
100% private.
Yes.
Maybe not.
Absolutely. You and I, if we pulled that money out of our pockets, it wouldn't have made sense.
Right.
But the government can help out in that. Now, there's other I'd like to see more government grants for that.
Yeah.
And I think they are coming because of that northern security and the military need. That's going to be dual use, multi-use, if they can use it for national defense plus community building. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I see that as a great thing.
Yeah, in Iceland, I saw some prototype for the Canadian military being developed of a solar wind turbine that can get put on a skid and dropped and put up, and it has a little built-in microgrid. We're talking about 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt. Like
Oh, yeah.
these are small systems, but it powers a camp, creates a base load. I think you pair it with some batteries and some thermal generation, but then you have something that can kind of continue on, doesn't need to, if you run out of fuel, you're not out.
Yeah, dual use.
You can still have your main electronics kind of working, and maybe on a scaled down version, but
Yeah.
it's just how you integrate these things together, deploy them, you do it intelligently. Like, I mean, the studio is not a great example of it. I got all these lights and stuff, but you think about your house versus an RV or your camper, the way you outfit all of your fridge and your lights and stuff, everything is on a DC basis. So everything's more efficient and can just be running from a couple solar panels and, a couple small batteries. So, I think it's just how you kind of deploy yourself. And, I feel like we're all becoming so energy hungry, and everything is becoming, more and more and more demand.
Yeah.
And it just ramps up the need more and more, right? And now we're starting to hit that red line, and we're just kind of bumping into, well, then if it all goes, it all goes. How long would we?
I would think that Yukon Energy has some plans for rolling blackouts, right? And so we're not left in the cold for days at a time. But absolutely, could it happen? Yes. Our demand is going up constantly. We're trying to meet that demand, but you get these extreme cold temperatures with this whole community on electric heat. Maybe it's a bit of a wake-up call that we should be going with a diesel or a generator outside, that just in case, with the plug to your panel, and have the things that really matter, your freezer, to make sure. But again, if it's freezing outside, I think you're good.
Just open up the door.
But having some panels, some of your baseboard heaters on, that you could maybe reduce where you live for a short period of time in your house.
Right.
LED lights, there's ways, demand side management, of really looking at your usage. And I think, years ago, I remember Yukon Energy and ATCO talking about demand side management, but also time of day power.
Right.
That's
guess what huge, actually.
Well, Europe does it.
Yeah.
Right. And the easiest way to make a community use or watch how much energy they're using is make them pay for it.
Right. You run your dryer in the middle of the night, or
that's right.
When you know that the cost is lowest.
That's right.
Because it's not in high demand.
Hit them in the pocketbook.
Yeah.
And people will realize that. Yeah. And I think people got to wake up this winter when, our price per kilowatt is going up, and then this cold snap.
Yeah.
People, and you've heard it on CBC complaining about the billing, and
that's a serious thing.
That very serious. And I feel for ATCO, but they've got to fix that problem. That's a huge issue. And some people used to 400 and then getting 900. That's just crazy. And so we got to be prepared for that. But looking at ways to reduce your energy, I think people started looking at it. Last winter. And we were turning off lights. We were not, not turning the kettle. An early riser, so I'm up at 5:30, so I could do my tea with the kettle, but then shutting it down for the 7 to 9 period. Lots of things can be done, but if we had time of day metering, people would change. They're absolutely they would change their methods and their behaviors on when they did things. And I think that's needed. And and again, we missed the boat. It's easy to say, but Whistle Bend. There should have been time of day power in Whistle Bend. We could have put in the meters and had that metered so that from 7 to 9 or 7 to 11, you are paying more for your power. And all your devices, your laundry machines, the delayed timers, they're all coming with them now, and they could do that kind of stuff.
It's that damn heat, though, I think is what really takes the bundle.
And And yeah, electrical heat, it's really efficient. It's super easy to install. So the contractors
The
love it.
cost for your development is so much lower.
And maintenance.
Yes.
So there's a ton of good things going for it. However, when the grid is constrained,
And you got to burn thermal anyway, just to electrify
okay,
your house.
yeah, don't go there.
You're
Yeah, I know.
starting to creep into it.
Yeah, so exactly when you're only getting 30% efficiency from your diesel generators, and instead of burning diesel outside your house to heat your home.
Yeah.
That's
We were in Dease Lake last week or a week and a half ago, and all of a sudden the power went out, and actually I think in that case it did come back on not too long, but they were saying because it's such a small grid, they're used to it going out for a day or two. And I was thinking how wild that is.
Yeah.
We experienced some power outages, but the smaller communities have to deal with these for a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're more equipped for it too, right? They're not, a lot of them have wood stoves and they got the backups, and I think they're a little bit more prepared. But and I think about Yukon just being a small grid, and I don't know how serious this government is in connecting the grids that is being talked about. It's such a huge price tag, and who does it benefit? And I think there's some opposition there, but when you just think about the stability of our grid, and just we're only so big, and we start bumping up onto that red line, things start falling apart really quickly.
Yeah, it's a concern. Yukon Energy has some work to do, but I think the First Nations can help them. I think the independent power producers, that program has been canceled now. They're looking at some type of revision around that. I just hope they can move on that, and so First Nations or private enterprise could bring these projects forward. They're out there, and not just electric either. Heating contracts. You guys heat buildings in Teslin. And YG has looked at this before, but again, they really haven't moved on it.
Not seriously enough, I don't think.
No, the corrections facility.
Sure.
That large.
Yeah. That's connected to a grid.
It's
like a small one.
So could they expand that?
I think expand the concept. This is something that we discovered with the geothermal, is that if you want to develop a geothermal project, you need to make sure the demand is getting ready, that you can take that heat.
Sure.
And if everybody doesn't have hydronic heating that could easily be tapped into, or you already lay the infrastructure and you start laying the network, you create that geothermal project, now you have instant demand. And that's something that they say too, is that in Reykjavik and other places that mass adopt this, you can't make it optional. Everybody has to take it.
Right.
It can't, if we're rolling out line and going into areas, every single house needs to take it.
Yeah.
And, are we ready for that type of approach? Like, you have to be, if you want to make something like that work. When Whistlebend was being built, it really sucks that we missed that boat, where we didn't just make that kind of a mandatory thing that, we want a central heating system here, or central utilities that allow this type of economies of scale, that we can mass deploy and create low cost, efficient alternatives for, whatever. Whistlebend, downtown city of Whitehorse, these are serious heat loads that we could really justify projects like that.
Yeah.
And I think is the only way we can move this forward.
Yeah, a little enforcement. You want people to come along, but how do you make them come along if it's cost effective? If you can save them some money.
Yeah.
And knowing that reliability is there also.
Yeah.
It's a lot of policy, and it's a lot of groundwork. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. Biomass, I've always said, wood is work. Right. It's both of those. When I heat with wood at home, and it's work. But I have an efficient home, and I don't mind the work.
Yeah.
at this stage, right?
Yeah.
I know. Ideally, I would love to get a small chip, a hopper through
Yeah.
a 4-inch hole through my wall,
Yeah.
feeding a wood stove with wood chips, and turn the dial just like a pellet stove,
Yeah.
but have wood chips.
Very nice.
Yeah. Oh, and guess what? There's very, very few companies like Hargasner, like that. They always scale up. They never scale down.
Right.
And that's, I remember back to cold climate, we were talking about the technology and the small turbines. They, Kluane, we looked at these Zant turbines. They're 100 kilowatts. They went bankrupt because they couldn't get their sales,
Right,
but the
right.
technology was there. But where they wanted to go was to scale up.
Yeah.
And I went, no, just perfect this 100,
Yeah.
perfect this 100,
Yeah.
guys, because these little communities could do it. But yeah, it's everyone wants to scale up.
Well, I saw, and I think Hargasner, but Froling has these high efficiency cordwood systems. So,
Yeah.
you're kind of getting away from that long-term kind of deployment, like fill up a hopper and walk away for days.
Yeah.
But a high efficiency cordwood system for a couple houses or a house and a shop, and they say that in-floor heating is the way.
Yeah.
No matter what we're
Sure.
talking about, geothermal, biomass, in-floor heating, that is the most efficient way of deploying these direct use or alternative heating sources.
Yeah.
And, that personally, I was thinking if I were to do this on a personal basis,
Yep.
go get a Froling or a Hargasner kind of cordwood system. Because when you're talking about what we're looking at, you're heating 10 homes minimum with
Right.
with a biomass wood chip 100 kilowatt system. Like that's 10 homes.
Yeah.
You could do it, but you got to convince a lot of neighbors and
That's right.
pipe it all there. And
Yeah, yeah, and you'd wish maybe a developer would take a section of Whistle Bend or a new
Yeah.
development saying, okay, here's what I'm going to build, and the city, support that and have that. In Copper Ridge, there years ago, there is a unit right, the first entrance just after the school. There is a small. I think it's 10 or 12 units that is heated with a biomass.
what?
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if they're still doing it, but I know they started it.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I would love to see someone do that, like build, 5-10 homes
Yeah.
that were all biomass and have those people chip in,
Yeah.
take turns.
Oh, did it just chip in?
In a sense of no, but
Well, you kind of capitalize it through their lot and their housing. You kind of build it out, and you're paying for your central system. Here's the business case. It's over 10 years or whatever, and then you're basically neutral cost, or the variable's so small that it's very favorable to do something like that.
and each of the neighbors are bringing wood in.
Right. Oh, now you're talking about like a true Scandinavia model.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then they've got they've got the wood chippers, but they're all on the tractors, the PTOs.
Yeah.
Right. You don't see a lot of tractors in North America. You see Bobcat with the
That's
little,
right.
but over there everything's on a tractor.
Right.
And they can, because it's so functional. They can remove snow, they can chip wood, they can do it's with tractors,
Right.
farm tractors.
Yeah.
And touring the biomass plants over there. It's a community that buys into that.
Right.
Something that we could learn.
In Samso, Denmark, are you familiar with this? Where they do they grow hay, they bale it up, and they put it through this Linka biomass boiler system.
Okay.
And
Blocks.
they create district heat. When I went there, they also have a solar a solar heat kind of overlay
Okay.
to that. So they're able to, and they have like 100,000 gallon tanks
Sure.
that
Okay.
they're heating up with solar heat,
Right.
and then the last 30% with biomass.
Okay.
They district heat the whole island. They have offshore wind turbines for the electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the first island in the world to be totally net zero when it comes to their heat and electricity. and in fact they sell electricity to the European grid.
Perfect.
But
yeah.
Soren, who's a mentor of mine through Indigenous Clean Energy, I'm a catalyst to this program.
Yeah.
He said that 20 years ago he tried doing this, and people were like, "Oh, it's an eyesore. I don't want it." They fought against it.
Yeah.
And they took another approach. They went to a bank. The bank said, "We will finance the shares of everybody if they opt in. They can be owners of this renewable energy utility."
Okay.
And so then people would opt in. They don't have to pay the returns that they would have got otherwise, pay the share back to the bank.
Yeah.
And now they're owners. And so now people are saying, build more, build more. It doesn't affect them anymore.
Right.
Because they're owners now.
Right.
And I think that's such an example of, here's how you take a community of NIMBYs and you made them owners.
Mm-hmm.
And their perspectives, the things that annoyed them versus the things that enjoy them has changed, and it's called community owned renewable energy core. It's this concept that they're exploring in other places, but I see that as being a real motivator, a social license development piece that allows you to kind of deploy these types of solutions in a way that in a scale that people can say they want it, they want more of it, and they adopt it. How do you get mass adoption? Make people owners.
Sure, get that buy-in. Well, it helps if they do see a return, like if they are actually getting a credit,
right,
or money back.
Yeah, and
right?
in this case, these guys are making bank.
Yeah,
because these offshore turbines, they're generating huge amount of electricity, and so they're just selling it to the grid.
Yeah,
and they're making a huge amount of money.
Yeah, yeah, and so these long term, think of these small hydro or ATCO. Think of ATCO's on their Fish Lake Road project.
Yeah.
That, I forget what year, 60, I'm guessing 67, 70, that project. And there's 4 little turbines on from Fish Lake all the way down to McIntyre Creek.
Okay.
And that's been paid for years and years ago.
Right.
And it's still making them money. Right. And so hydro projects, 100 years, you could get, 100 years out of a hydro, and the capital, maybe see that paid in the long term, maybe 10 years.
Right.
Government grants knock that down to 5 years. And then that's just a generational wealth for these communities.
Yeah.
The challenge in the Yukon is, how do we give that dividend back to the citizens?
Right.
And it's tough to become a true utility. It's ATCO who sells us the power.
Yeah.
It's ATCO through the utility board that sets those rates. So it may be like Burwash. Their standalone could become their own utility.
Right.
Once you get on the grid, then it's much more difficult. And
I don't think there's anything limiting another utility on the main grid.
No, I don't think it, but you'd have to go through the utility board.
Yeah.
But if you look at, say, Carcross Teslin, you have a small hydro there. How right now, you can't go to ATCO and say, okay, we're gonna sell you this electricity, but for the citizens in Carcross, could we give them $25 off their electric bill?
Right.
And that have to be approved by the utility board. And you get into all these challenges where, is it just citizens, or there's non-citizens living in Teslin, living in Carcross?
Yeah.
Could you go by postal code? And the thing is, the last thing is, you can't just cut a check for citizens, because you want it going towards that electrical. You can't just cut a check because you don't know where that money's going.
Right.
So it's a challenge, but
it's good problems.
Oh, it is. Get that,
Yeah.
sell that electricity,
Yeah.
and then deal with the dividend after.
Yeah.
Once that project is paid.
Yeah.
And I think there's, the fact that the IPP policy in the Yukon was 21 cents. You put wind or solar on the grid, and Yukon Energy will pay 21 cents for that.
Yeah.
So do you think now that we're in this crunch and they're throwing more diesel at it, do you think that a kilowatt should be worth 21 cents, or do you think it should be worth more?
Right.
And that's the question, because I think it should be worth more.
Well, if you're offsetting diesel fuel, it is worth more, right? Because just on the pure replacement value, you're already spending more on your alternative.
Absolutely.
So you can premium that up a bit.
So, so that is going to be the question when new producers come online or trying to come online. You need that power purchase agreement to have that secure to get your financing, to actually see the economics of the project. And and I think it's a political will. I think our government has to look at that and say it is worth more, and work with YDC and YEC to come up what is a new cost of power.
Right.
And because I think that will help incentivize, and if they have a process built for that, so you can get your power purchase agreement, then you can look at the financing, and if it makes sense, make this project happen.
Yeah.
And we need that. Mm-hmm. We need that in the Yukon also.
So transitioning away now from electricity and energy, talk about some of the things you've been working on. You probably have some successes to talk about, some projects that are exciting to you.
Sure. Well, when I put on my Kiwani hat on the investments and things, super proud of the Yukon First Nations aerial leasing program.
Right.
If people don't know about that, it was bringing together a bunch of development corporations in working with Wendy at Alcan Air and going after the medevac contract. It was going to be renewed, and the RFP came out, and this was years in the making because delays of the RFP release. But we already had a relationship with Natronagdan and Kiwani and Coppernisu on a lease with Wendy, with Alcan Air, so we wanted to expand on that. But we also wanted to expand on the number of corporations. We wanted all 14 DevCorps to come in. Mm-hmm. And the whole program that we came up, when there's Wendy that came up with this, was Yukoners supporting Yukon and Yukoners. And the whole premise was, okay, these medevacs are hitting every community. Why not have the First Nations and Yukoners be part owners of that? And we were successful. And so the purchasing of 2 planes, brand new planes, plus the third. And so it's a 10-year contract with the government of Yukon for this medevac. And this is, to me, just the start of building this pie bigger of what these First Nations DevCorps could do, coming together with their capital and the clout that medevac is hugely important. We're supporting and we're saving the lives of fellow Yukoners. Well, I'm looking forward to the day when we can have the wildland fire contract and have airplanes, protecting Yukoners. And to me, that would be amazing, because those planes that are used to fight fires can be moved around the world. And so in the Yukon, in the summertime, we could have them here, and you chase the fire season up. You could be, in California in January, and you could start moving north. And then in the wintertime, our winter, they could be in Tasmania, Australia, Africa, fighting fires. So that is just huge utilization factor and revenue, but bringing them back every summer to protect the Yukon. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Other projects, you mentioned the Grid Connect. I absolutely think that we could have a First Nations Power Corp looking at bringing on, sure, the Grid Connect is a project that's years away. But if that Grid Connect did happen, the first thing I think the federal government might help support that Grid Connect. But what they're going to ask Yukoners is, can you put a big project on the grid to put electrical back into the grid, potentially selling that to BC,
Right.
to Alberta?
Yeah.
And that's going to be the true test when the Yukon is going to become NIMBYs and say, no, we don't want 100 megawatt project, Site C dam in the Yukon.
But it makes the business case work too. Like when you only have a seasonal customer, or when you're competing with these other renewable energies in the summertime, you're competing with water being spilled from the dams.
Absolutely.
Your business case isn't year round.
Yeah, and so we do need, if put a big project on, we need the grid to push the electricity, the electrons south. I personally start with focus on your strengths. Do we need a Grid Connect? Well, we've got an energy problem right now. How about some smaller hydros to overcome that? And then if we get the big casino mines, we need that Grid Connect. And I know that the whole reason for the Grid Connect is the critical mineral push. And that's what's being sold to Ottawa. And true, we need the critical minerals, we need the mines. Super happy that Selkirk bought into Minto.
Yeah.
Right. There's it's the second mine in Canada majority owned by First Nations. They're not going anywhere. They're going to make sure that thing's cleaned up.
Yeah.
They're going to make sure it's sensible mining. It's that ground is protected. And there's a lot of other things they could do with that. I mentioned the SMRs. It'd be amazing to put some SMRs there because it is a brownfield.
Yeah.
There's already a grid going in there. Turn that around. Other projects, I guess, back to what we're doing, always looking to work with other dev corps, because I think there's a lot of strength in numbers.
Yeah.
The telco, we formed the Yukon First Nations telco. That brought all the First Nations in, and we bought some fiber, leased it back to Northwest Tel. Well, I think that could be expanded, and looking at a chunk of Northwest Tel and having that, and then with support of this northern security. Telecom is huge in security, and what do we need in the north? We need more fiber.
Yeah.
Fiber is king. Elon Musk has his LEOs, the low Earth orbits, out there and is doing very well. But they're not full. And the reason why they're doing great is because that bandwidth isn't full. But once it gets full, we're going to see a slower bandwidth.
Yeah.
There'll be more complaints to them. And fiber is king. So it'd be great to see some fiber across the north. But again, it's small. We need federal government. The communities in the north, they're not big enough to support that cost of that infrastructure. But what would that infrastructure build? If we had it, we would have an amazing first warning system to protecting the north. We could have security with that type of remote sensing. There's a ton of things that fiber could bring to the north. And again, dual use, multi-use. You'd see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think of the dew line, right, in the 50s and 60s when that was rolled out, that early warning system. That was surveyed and that was satellite now. Well, there's way faster technology. And we need to look after the North. It is that the Northwest Passage is opening up. We need to have that surveillance up there, that kind of communication when other ships go through there, cruise ships or cargo ships. Yeah, we need to have that response.
Yeah. I think we covered a lot of ground today.
We covered, what did we touch on? Back to cold climate, it was housing, food security. We didn't touch on food security and energy. Those three, I think, those are the biggest issues in the North. And if we can take a chunk out of each one and reduce those and help those three out, we're all doing good.
Yeah.
And encourage the younger generation, other people to step forward and help solve the housing, the food, energy. And this place will be a much better place to live.
Well, I feel like no matter what role you take on, these are your priorities, and you're moving communities forward in building out the solutions.
Yeah, and I can't do it alone, Blair.
That's right.
You need me. I need everyone.
Yeah. And
I will support anyone who's trying to help do that, move those along. Absolutely. Because we've got to. It's a beautiful place, great place to raise kids. More and more people are coming, as you can see the demographics in the North changing.
Yeah.
We need to. Housing is huge. We can't build an economy without housing. It needs energy and it needs food.
Yeah.
They're stuck. It's an equilateral triangle on that puppy. Yeah, right on. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Super fun chatting. And
we'll have to maybe do an update here down the line.
And looking forward to see who else you bring on.
Yeah.
I'll recommend some people for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks to Jesse, our engineer in the back court, making this all work.
Okay. Awesome.
Take care.
Yeah, take care.